Hi, Tom Richardson, host of Explore New England, and I'm excited to bring you the special finale episode to our first season. Now, as we revisit our adventures, it's important to remember that most of them were filmed before the pandemic struck, a much more innocent time when we didn't have to worry about washing our hands a bunch during the day, social distancing, or wearing face masks in public. Like most of you, I am eager to return to those days, and I'm hopeful that we can, but only if we all do our part. Of course, it helps if we spend more time outdoors, which fortunately is what we're all about. So on that note, sit back, relax, and pay a virtual visit to some of New England's spectacular places and meet some of its really interesting people.
Explore New England is brought to you by your New England Ford dealers, REI Co-op. REI believes a life outdoors is a life well lived. Geico. See how much you could save on more than just car insurance. And visitnewengland.com. Over the last year and a half, Explore New England traveled all over the region, gathering footage of some spectacular places, many of them new to me. Places such as Fourth Connecticut Lake in the farthest reaches of New Hampshire. If you can believe it, this tiny pond near the Canadian border is the source of the 410-mile Connecticut River, which flows through 4 states and all the way to Long Island Sound. Of course, New Hampshire is known for its fall foliage, and our crew captured some beautiful drone footage while we passed through Dixville Notch on a chilly October morning. We also found beauty and a bit of inspiration in surprising places, including the north end of New Bedford, Massachusetts, where the Buzzards Bay Coalition and its community partners have transformed a former sawmill on the Acushnet River into a preserve that is helping to restore the health of the watershed and where members of the community can come to observe nature. It is truly an inspirational story.
When their parents are both working 2 jobs to put food on the table, which is a lot of the people in the city, a lot of people in this country, they don't get to do those weekend trips.
Nope.
They don't get to go much farther than how their bicycle, where their bicycle can take them. But here we literally have thousands of people in walking distance of this site. And so particularly in the summertime, when school's out or on school vacation, this place is loaded with kids riding their bikes here just to come to hang out. And that's amazing that they're able to do that.
It's a great thing that you guys have provided here, and the community has provided.
Winter brought with it new ways to explore the region, and in northern Maine we snowmobiled to a pair of abandoned locomotives once used for transporting logs from the forest to the water. The so-called ghost trains have resided near the shores of Eagle Lake for 100 years and make for a surreal scene in the snowy woods. Similarly surreal are the giant modern wind energy towers that pop up in remote areas. We visited 2 such installations by ATV, one in Bingham, Maine, and the other in Jericho Mountain State Park outside Gorham, New Hampshire. Sporting camps sprouted in the wilds of New England in the early 1800s, and several still exist, albeit in slightly different forms. In the 100-mile wilderness, we visited Little Lyford Camps, which first opened in 1880 and is now operated by the Appalachian Mountain Club as a winter destination for cross-country skiers.
The Appalachian Mountain Club is the country's oldest conservation group. We've been around since 1876, and we service the whole Northeast, up and down the whole Appalachian Mountain region. And AMC, from its inception, has always been about, by putting people in direct contact with nature, you're able to develop a really intense commitment to stewardship, environmental stewardship, and an environmental ethic where, that outdoor recreation component serves as the gateway. So in 2003, AMC took a ginormous leap and bought this tract, the 37,000-acre Katahdin Ironworks tract from International Paper. And then that opened the gateway for us, and we were able to acquire enough land so that today we're at 75,000 acres, soon to be 100,000 acres with another addition that we're working on currently. Now, this is the largest remaining contiguous forest left anywhere in the United States. It's 10.4 million acres. And growing up here, the forest is it just defines everything that we do. It's where we make our living, and it's how our communities are built and how our lives are structured. So, for me, it was a wonderful experience, and it still is, to be able to run around on this land base, hunting and fishing and canoeing and cross-country skiing and snowmobiling, and just really enjoying unfettered public access, which is so unique for a private network of lands that exist here in northern Maine.
While we visited some amazing places and did some really cool things in our first season, we also met some really interesting people. People like Roger Courier of Couriers Flying Service in Greenville, Maine.
When I was a child, I'd always look up at airplanes and was infatuated with airplanes. So when I got out of college, the Air Force had a good program. I could go into the Air Force and pick my career fields, which I picked aircraft mechanics, which I like working on stuff. So in 1967, I started my love affair with airplanes. I woke up one morning in the late 70s and realized that the southern part of New Hampshire had become another suburb of Boston. And I don't do well in city life. Finally, we bailed out of the southern part of New Hampshire, came up here one time and never went back. And nobody really paid real close attention to high quality sightseeing tours. So that's what I started to do. It's as close as you can get to wilderness in the lower 48. People around Boston, they don't have to travel that far to see this sort of thing. Well, overall, my favorite thing to do is to show passengers like yourself the scenery that we have in the region, what God has done for us up here. And I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. I get a lot of satisfaction out of flying the old vintage planes. Sometimes I just go out on my own and just enjoy flying one of them alone.
And we couldn't forget our time with Dan Legere, one of the finest fishing guides in northern Maine, a real gentleman and a ton of fun to fish with. To top it off, Danny also prepares a mean shore lunch, so no matter what the fishing action is like, you'll never go hungry, and you'll see some beautiful country.
One day my father put me out on a stream and said, I'll meet you down at the next pool, and with a fly rod with a Royal Coachman, I think it was, and there was a hatch. Every fish in the pool was going after my fly, and it was that day that I actually learned how to hook trout. And I caught a limit of trout right there. The reason why I moved to Greenville and the reason why I live here is because I can leave my house in downtown Greenville and in 15 minutes be on a wild trout pond all by myself. Within 1 hour radius of our shop in Greenville, there's over 40 trout ponds. And then that doesn't count the rivers and all the lakes and everything else. It's just unbelievable.
Up in the northeast corner of Vermont, hard on the Canadian border, we ran into April Lemay, owner of April's Maple Sugar House and Restaurant. April gave us a tour of her syrup-making operation and some insight into her unique life.
So I do this because I have traveled to many places in the United States and around the world, and I have never found a place that I could call home like Canaan has always been. And so I had the opportunity to really reinvest back into Canaan in a nice way, and I took that opportunity. My mom and her 5 sisters had started taking care of this land that you're on and that we've kind of taken a look at, and they were thinking about selling. And there wasn't anything on the land at that point, and I had been looking for an investment. I had a corporate job, and I wasn't necessarily thinking that my investment would be a sugar house or 800 acres of land in rural Vermont. But the opportunity came up, and it felt like something that I could do, something that would mean a lot to me, and I could make a difference for myself and for my family and for people around me. So it just felt right, and so I bought that land in 2012 and started to put together, April's Maple.
Back on Moosehead Lake, we also spent some time with Captain Rocky Rockwell aboard the restored steamship Katahdin. Rocky shared some tales of his days as a timber harvester, including his participation in the last log drive on Moosehead.
So from time to time, when the boat would come over, there'd be light of man. I'd jump on. I'd go, well, I'll go with you guys. I'd hook up with my normal crew in a day or two. So when I first started, again, in the late 60s, there was no thoughts of it. It was just a way of life. You know, it had been done for generations. Went to the closest running stream or body of water and put their wood in it and floated it to their mills. Things were changing. So we were the last ones to go. We held out until 75 here on Moosehead, 76 on the river below the Forks. Wood coming down the rivers was over with. We all just kind of looked at each other and went, well, there it goes. That's it for that. We won't ever do this again. I never really thought much about retiring. It's one of those jobs I had, if I had a chance to do it again, I'd do it for nothing. It was a lot of fun.
And in the nearby town of Shirley, we met Ashley and Mark Patterson, who provided insight to the world of dog sledding.
You're just out there in the middle of nowhere and you depend on the dogs. And hey, if they want to stop because you've entered a snowstorm, we've actually had scenarios where you've actually gone through 18 inches of fresh snow, and you imagine doing that as just a person. Now put that into the dog's brains where everything gets really slow and boring. So that's why you got to be really good at faking like you're happy, and you know you're always good at changing the mood of the dogs along with even it affecting your own mood.
A bit farther south still, in the woods of Bingham, Maine, we took a break on an ATV ride to chat with Joanne Goodridge, the proprietor of the humble Papa Joe's home cookin' restaurant, where Joanne's delicious food and homemade pies will leave you coming back for more.
I learned to cook when I was about 7, 8 years old. I more or less did it on my own. Yeah, I was brought up in a two-room log cabin with 7 people. I'm a backwoods woman. I'll tell you a story. When I was about 7, I was making cookies, and they come out beautiful. And my brother went to eat one, and he spit it out. And come find out, I'd put in a half cup of baking soda instead of half teaspoon. So that's how I started. And then my neighbor way up on the hill, she was a big help. Her name was Hilda Vows, and she was a big help. And from there, I just experimented with a lot of foods, and I just loved to cook.
In addition to meeting some interesting outdoors people, we also had some close encounters with New England wildlife.
From loons to heron, gray jay to deer, butterflies to frogs, we ran into all sorts of wild critters, but certain encounters stood out. For example, there was the attack woodcock that nearly flew into my face on a hunt near Bingham, Maine.
You know, you've seen 2 bull moose fighting, those kind of things, they make it, you know, and those are those memories that you never forget.
There it goes, woodcock. Whoa.
I could have caught it with my hands.
He went like that and then banged it.
And then there was the rare leaping false albacore I hooked off New Bedford with guide Corey Petrazik.
Going and then they stop again. In front of us, right here. Is it core? Yeah, it's core. Yeah. Nice cast. I'm in. Nice. Oh, that was awesome! That was awesome! Never seen one jump like that. Tom, that was awesome.
In Pittsburgh, we ran into, okay, not the real Bigfoot, but an equally large and hairy beast that showed itself on the last day of our shoot. We owed that moose a lot for making a guest appearance, but it paled in comparison to what occurred on the last evening of filming in Bingham, Maine. Scott Newton and I were returning to the dock in his pontoon boat when suddenly, talk about made for TV.
Right there. He's good. He's right across.
Oh yeah, check it out. It's a full move. Check it out. I've only seen a moose swim across the lake 3 times with my wife.
I can't say that we suffered from a lack of food during the filming of our first season, and I probably put a few pounds on as a result. However, if I ever get back to Gorham, New Hampshire, I'm heading straight to the Road Hog Swine Dining and ordering their pig pile platter. That was some kind of good.
It's labor of love, really.
Good. Have you always been into barbecue? Have you always loved it?
Yeah, Our family did a Memorial Day celebration for 21 years where we had a couple hundred people at our event every year. We cooked a pig. Had a regular Memorial Day celebration and speeches
And that's how you got into it?
That's how we got into it.
And
but
then,
we did barbecue competitions too, as you know, as a hobby.
Snap. Oh man, looks so good. Pick it up. That is a good rib.
We're all 100% wood fired. We use apple, maple, and cherry wood. We developed our own rub, our own sauces, and cook low and slow like barbecue's meant to do. We started as a barbecue trailer. We did events such as music festivals, fairs, that kind of thing. Kind of a demand for our product out there. Number one question at the window was, where's your restaurant? You gotta have a restaurant. We'll travel to your restaurant. And we're from Vermont originally. We moved to the North Country into our second home, bought this place, built it up, attracted to the ATV business, and it's working for us.
If I find myself in Cambridge, Vermont again, I know just the place to unwind and refuel after a day of skiing. Just down the road from Smuggler's Notch Resort, Martels at the Red Fox serves a tasty pecan-crusted pork chop and steamed Prince Edward Island mussels with chorizo. The entertainment's pretty good too.
We opened a little over 4 years ago. Our family's been in Jeffersonville for over 35 years. Grew up here. My father worked at Smuggler's Notch as a village services manager for a very long time and then started his own transportation business through Smuggler's Notch. Then when he got done that, he was looking for a new adventure, and he always wanted to open a place that had live music, being a musician himself. My wife and I had always talked about opening a restaurant of our own as well, and my youngest brother was a bar manager at a couple different places, so it kind of all fell together, and we established Martels the last few days of 2015.
Fishing has a way of sparking my appetite, and the shore lunch of steak tips and salad prepared on a gravel bar along the Connecticut River by Bill Bernhardt was worthy of a 5-star rating in my book. The incredible fishing was almost secondary. Sometimes we even got to eat the fish we caught, as was the case when I hooked up for an ice fishing trip on frozen Moosehead Lake with Scott, Dean, and Les Harding. There's really nothing quite so delicious as fresh lake trout pulled from the frigid water and fried up in a skillet. While we never bagged any record-sized togue, the highlight for me was the on-ice fish fry presided over by Dean Harding. I'd say that was a pretty good way to cap off my action-packed winter visit to a part of Maine that knows how to have a good time when the snow flies. While I'll certainly never be hailed as a culinary wizard, even the most inept of chefs can't screw up a breakfast of corned beef hash, eggs, and bacon, which I prepared on a cold and drizzly morning at Lake Francis State Park in northern New Hampshire. Somehow the weather seemed to brighten up after that first bite.
As we traveled throughout New England, we also picked up lots of interesting tidbits about the local flora and fauna. For example, Steve Tatko of the Appalachian Mountain Club proved to be a font of knowledge on all things outdoors, including chaga fungus? Who would have guessed?
So we've got a nice, strange little yellow birch that looks like it's been hit many times by ice right here on the riverbank, and on one of the wounds on the side of the yellow birch we've got a chaga fungus, which is a traditional medicinal fungus that was been used by the First Nations here for centuries. It's been used for medicinal purposes for thousands of years. And it's just, and that's what's so great about these floodplain forests like this, where the river's right there, and this whole area floods several times throughout the year, so it's a very rich environment.
On an ATV ride through the woods of Bingham, Maine, Scott Newton paused to share a bit of knowledge regarding the local plants.
Indian cucumber.
No kidding.
So, it's about the crunchiness and texture of a cucumber, but it's full of water, so it's really good for hydration.
I can't believe you.
I swear to God, I'll eat one with you. You know, minus the small amount of dirt.
Yeah, it tastes just like a cucumber. Cucumber tasty.
Also in Bingham, we paused at an overgrown orchard to pick a few old world apples with hunting guide Siren Soren.
Nice and tart.
These are antique apples. So these are like old world brands, you know what I mean?
Oh,
They
yeah.
don't, yeah, so a lot of times like a company, Fedco will come out and they'll graft these things and they'll take them to try to get some.
No kidding.
And on Block Island, Kim Gaffett of the Nature Conservancy talked about the importance of milkweed.
This is a common milkweed.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it's such a beautiful plant. This is the first one I've seen blooming this year. But this one, if you look at that, that is just a beautiful plant. And that is a host to the monarch caterpillar. And these fields will be filled with one. You can once you start looking, there's another one there.
So the monarch butterflies, the monarch caterpillars, obviously, do they feed exclusive? The caterpillars feed exclusively on the milkweed?
Yeah. The monarch caterpillar will land and lay her egg on the underside of the leaf. Then when the egg hatches, the little tiny caterpillar is right on its food source.
So as you can see, it was a very busy year for the Explore New England crew. We traveled all over the place, we saw some amazing places, met some really cool people, and learned a lot about our beautiful region. I can't wait to see what comes next. In the meantime, I urge you to get outdoors and make some memories of your own.
you.